Sorry about that dreadful squeak. Good evening, members, and good evening, officers, and good evening to members of the public and all of those who are watching on the YouTube channel. This is our Planning Committee meeting this evening on the 7th of November. So could I just remind members, obviously we're using electronic agendas again. I think it would be helpful if you're going to draw your attention or officers' attention to items in the report and the agenda. Could you please note the page number and paragraph number to help the officers find the section on the report? Thank you, members. So we'll move on to the agenda this evening. So the first item is apologies for absence. We have received apologies from Councillor Finken, who is being substituted by Councillor Thorogood. We have also received apologies from Councillor Hayes, who's been substituted by Councillor Bowers. And we have also had apologies from Councillor Spray, who unfortunately, I know she has tried, but has been unable to find a substitute for this evening. Otherwise, we are all here. And I assume that Councillor Beavis is on her way. Thank you, Steady. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Robert. So we'll move now on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda having a regard to the Code of Conduct for members? Councillor Down, sorry, Councillor Down.
I am a friend and colleague of Councillor Jack Coleman, who will be speaking to us tonight. We haven't spoken about the issue pertaining to the case. It's just something he's mentioned to me briefly, and I thought I should mention it. Thank you.
And so you're going to remain and vote?
If that is what you would advise, I will do, yes.
Yes, if it's a non-pecuniary interest, that's normally what we advise. Thank you. Councillor Thorogood.
Yes, I also know 2 people in the audience that have got planning applications in.
Is that a obviously non-pecuniary, non-pecuniarism, and you're going to remain and vote?
Yes. Could Councillor Thorogood just confirm which items you're referring to, please?
Councillor Hooks.
Thank you. Can I declare a non-pecuniary interest in application 23-00737? It's the reserved matters one in Hatfield Road, Witham. My stepbrother is a director of Phase 2 Planning, which is the agent for this application. Although he's one of several directors, he's not involved in this case, and I haven't spoken to him about this case at all, so I will remain and vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hooks. Councillor Abbott.
Yes, just for clarity, Madam Chairman, although the site for the 5B application doesn't include the elm tree in Hatfield Road, and therefore I don't believe is pertinent to this application, and I haven't made any comment one way or other on this application. I just thought I'd mention that I have been trying to save that elm tree, but I don't believe it's any more than an MPI.
No, I think you're correct on that, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Beavis, do you have any wish to make any declarations of interest?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is minutes of the previous meeting. We should have had the minutes of the previous meeting on the 17th of October to approve, but they are not quite ready. They'll be ready very shortly, so we will hold them over to the next meeting and approve the minutes at the next meeting. Item 4 on the agenda, public question time. We don't have any registered speakers who wish to make any general points on the planning matters, so we will then move straight on to the planning applications, item 5 on the agenda. The first item on the agenda, item 5A, which is application number 22/024994, which is land rear of Harkerleys Way, Braintree. That application has been withdrawn, will be considered later. So if any members here are either listening on the YouTube channel or are in the audience, that application will not be determined this evening. So we will now move on to the next application, which is application number 5B. The application number is 23/00737 land north of Woodend Farm, Hatfield Road, Witham. This application, members, can be found on page 30 of your agenda. And we do have one speaker on this application, who's Councillor Jack Coleman from Witham Town Council. If you'd like to come to the table there, Councillor Coleman, and press the button, turn the microphone on, you'll have 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Good evening. So I wish to make a statement on behalf of Witham Town Council in regards to application 23/00737 land north of Woodend Farm, Hatfield Road, Witham. The Town Council has always had concerns regarding the felling of the elm tree in the middle of Hatfield Road to allow for a new road layout. We have been in contact with Andrew Digby, your tree and landscape officer, who has explained that this iconic elm tree, which is over 100 years old, has evidence of fungus around the base of the tree and is likely to cause decay and become unstable. As the tree is on a traffic island, it will unfortunately need to be felled. The tree is Dutch elm disease resistant, therefore it is proposed to take root saplings and nurture before planting on the new development. The Town Council considered the application and its last planning and transport meeting, and while sympathetic regarding the sense of felling surrounding the issue, recognised that proposals in regard to the tree were the best outcome, but nevertheless were disappointed that felling was necessary. We therefore asked that all saplings should be used in Witham and some gifted to our tree group to plant. We would also like to see at least one tree planted in the proposed roundabout so that there should eventually be a prominent elm on the entrance into Witham. Members also asked that as part of the conditions that the felled elm tree should be used to create a commemorative item such as a bench or arbour to recognise the historic elm. Trees with local significance have been made into commemorative items and have been a lasting memory of the significant cultural and historical value as this elm has to Witham. Examples of felled trees of a similar size to this can be seen at Bude and Stratton Council in North Cornwall. The felled tree has provided the town with commemorative benches that can now be enjoyed near the saplings of the tree. Thank you for your time, and I hope we can all agree to make the best out of a very unfortunate situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. We don't have any other speakers on this item, so we'll now move to the presentation, which is going to be given by Alison. Thank you, Alison.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. The application I present to you this evening is in relation to a reserved matters application for the appearance, layout, scale, access and landscaping of a section of Spine Road pursuant to the outline permission granted for Woodend Farm in 2022. It was granted for up to 400 residential dwellings and a day nursery. Apologies. Jack?
Has it stopped completely?
Yeah.
I might need to restart. Sorry, stop sharing. This is the one.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, members, you can gather we're having a few technical issues with getting the presentation up, and for those watching on YouTube, that is why we have a short delay.
I do apologise. I shall start again. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. The application I present to you this evening is in relation to a reserved matters application for the appearance, layout, scale, access and landscaping of a section of Spine Road pursuant to the outline permission for Wood End Farm. Yes. Wood End Farm lies to the south of Witham, adjacent to the Red Row Lodge Farm development to the east, the railway line to the north and the A12 to the south. The site is identified as a strategic growth location in the adopted local plan. The details of the access into the site, to the south, were approved at the outline stage, subject to the necessary agreements with the Highway Authority. All matters other than the strategic access point into the site from Hatfield Road were reserved for future determination. These show the site at the moment, which has not started development. This is looking northwest, right across the site, with the railway line to the very north. This is looking northeast towards the Lodge Farm development. This is looking southwest towards the A12 and southeast towards the Co-op petrol station. This reserved matters application constitutes the first application to be submitted following outline consent. The purpose of this application is to provide the details for the general arrangement of the main development Spine Road and small section of the secondary road north of the proposed bus turning, which provides the link between access from Hatfield Road and the future development parcels. The road travels through the centre of the site in a north-south direction and is approximately 420 metres in length and 18 metres in total width. The road would be constructed to adoptable standards with a 6.75 metre width carriageway with 3 metre wide grass verges on either side of the carriageway and footways. The footway on the southern side of the carriageway would be 2 metres in width, with the footway on the northern side of the carriageway being a 3.5 metre shared footway cycleway. The northern section of the road, beyond the bus turning head here, then narrows to 5.5 metres. A bus stop is located on the western side of the road, approximately 240 metres from the Hatfield Road junction. Speed tables and speed cushions are proposed along the length of the road, and the road will be restricted to 20 miles per hour. A total of 8 visitor car parking spaces are located. These are defined as single and double spaces along the entire stretch of the road. Streetlights will be located on both sides, and the details of which have come forward by way of Condition 8 of the outline consent. The location of the street lighting has been considered as part of this application in terms of both the adoptable standards and conflict with trees, both of which are considered acceptable. No objection has been raised by the Highways Authority with regards to the layout and adoptability. In terms of the principle of development, a suite of parameter plans and a detailed design code forms part of the approved documents for the site at the outline stage, in which any reserved matters must be in accordance with. The approved transport and movement parameter plan, which you can see on the screen, showed a Spine Road in the location proposed, with a roundabout to the north, and it indicated as a bus route. It also identifies a proposed strategic footway cycle link on the eastern side of the road, which runs to the north of the site. The design code reiterates the design intentions for the road by setting out the detailed design and width of the Spine Road, verges, footway and cycleway. The Spine Road being indicated in pink on the screen with tertiary roads coming off and a dedicated footway link, and it also being tree-lined. The design code also goes on to indicate the indicative primary street sections. All of the design aspirations have been achieved with the reserved matters application. In terms of landscaping, the code approved 3 different character areas within the site, which set the principles going forward in terms of the landscape design for each of the sections. The spine road dissects two of these, the gateway and the greens. In terms of landscaping, to the spine road itself, the road will be tree-lined with a total of 25 new trees. And they've been positioned in the verge on both sides along the length of the spine road. The design code sets out the illustrative planting palette for the primary and secondary street trees, as well as the gateway and feature street trees. The species of the trees selected along the spine road feature London plane, field maple, hornbeam, tulip tree and small leaf lime, forming a mixture of native and non-native species. This application also includes the gateway green to the entrance of the site, which seeks to create a formal arrival point, including an area of green space and formal tree planting. The aim was not only to create an attractive entrance to the site, but to also set up the theme of green links throughout the development. There is specific illustration and guidance within the design code as to the design of this particular area. The gateway green will consist of mown lawn with shrubs, ornamental bulb planting, clipped beech hedgerow, 4 large size stock false acacia trees and 3 translocated elm saplings from the elm tree, which sits within the highway at the front of the site. These are located there. The tree species have been selected in accordance with the illustrative species identified and agreed within the approved design code. No existing trees are to be removed as part of this proposal. A row of existing trees on the eastern boundary will also be incorporated into the planting. The trees will be protected during development in accordance with the arboricultural impact assessment accompanying this application, which has been assessed by the Council's arboriculturalist and is considered to be sound. The elm tree, which sits outside of this site and this application in highway land, does not form part of this application. The principle of the removal of the elm tree was approved at the outline stage. A condition was attached to the outline permission for a feasibility study and methods to be undertaken with regards to its relocation. The applicant submitted a feasibility study and method statement in February and May this year. The feasibility study concluded that the elm tree cannot be moved due to the significant and disruptive excavation required for the root plates which is underneath the carriageway. However, the report states that the tree is suckering from the roots, creating a dense group of genetically identical young elms. The proposal is therefore to separate and move 6 of the root suckers, with additional ones kept in the nursery at Ruskin Trees and Landscape as a backup. The 6 saplings will be incorporated into the on-site planting scheme, 3 of which have been proposed to be located within the Gateway Green and 3 proposed within the Central Park area. The Council has received a Reserve Matters application for the Central Park area, which is currently under assessment. Officers note Whittam Town Council's comments and a discussion has been started with Countryside on the point raised in relation to gifting any surplus trees to the Town Council. These discussions do not form part of this application and cannot be secured through this application, but the discussions will continue in the future. In conclusion, the layout, scale, access, landscaping and appearance of the road are considered acceptable and functional and are in accordance with the approved outline parameter plans and design code. The proposal would contribute towards sustainable travel, allowing for the creation of footways, cycleways and a new bus route. No existing trees are to be removed to facilitate the development. The landscaping and tree-lined streets would create an attractive entrance into the site. Given the nature of the development, there is not considered to be any detrimental impact on existing residential amenity. Any disturbance from construction can be mitigated by the opposed outline and further recommended conditions. There are no objections from the relevant statutory consultees. The application would therefore act as a catalyst for the wider development of the strategic allocations to come forward, allowing for additional housing to be built in the district. It is recommended that members resolve to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Before I pass over to members, can I just ask you if you could just comment on Councillor Coleman's point about commemorative bench from the wood that the felled elm tree? If, there was a request that should be part of the condition, but presumably that wouldn't be possible. But could you just comment on that request?
Yeah. So the felling of the elm tree is not included within the application that we're considering tonight. The felling was approved at the outline stage, and the condition attached to the outline permission actually looked at the relocation as opposed to what the wood was used to after. But the fact that it's not actually considered as part of this application, but it's definitely something that we can discuss with Countryside when the felling is going to take place. We haven't had any timelines of when that's going to happen yet, but it's something that we can definitely take away and start discussions.
Thank you, Alison. I'll pass it over to members. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's good to see that no further trees are going to be lost during the construction of the Spine Road. That's a positive. It's good to see that there are plenty of street trees planted along the Spine Road. A little bit interested at the spacing. The spacing seems quite wide, and maybe there's a reason for that. And I think the gateway approach is very positive. Having quite a wide sort of verdant approach. Obviously, the rest of it is pretty functional. Bus stops, street lights. Good to see the shared cycleway, footway provision. Just very briefly touching on the elm tree in the sense that survivor saplings from the route runners are going to be relocated into this site and possibly elsewhere. Comments been made that the tree has disease and it's not in the best of health. That's true, but the point about why I raised this in the first place, and I am very grateful for the committee's agreement that more research should be done, which it was, and we've got to where we are, was that veteran survivor tree was never surveyed or included in the original plans which came before us. Essex County Council carried on as if it didn't exist. Now, that fact, and I won't go on about this, just a couple more sentences, when I posted that online, that nearly hit 100,000 people viewed that story nationally, and I had a lot of offers from professional people who come and help, which is really beyond my remit. I said, well, go and have a look if you want, but it's beyond my remit to actually directly get involved with that. You need to talk to the council. But people really care about this. And on the issue of diseased trees, when I first started getting interested in trees, I became aware of a number of trees in this area which are still standing, which are completely hollow and have bracket fungi and have dead tops, and they're still alive. So old trees, like old people, unfortunately, bits fall off and go a bit haywire. There's not a lot of difference. As we get older, things go wrong with us. And there's nothing to think that tree wouldn't survive for many more years. However, we are where we are. I think the lesson is, if this happens again, to avoid it happening again, to make sure that if a veteran survivor tree like that is threatened by development, that full account is taken of it to try and protect it. We knew there was going to be a new road junction, but perhaps it could have included that tree as a survivor. But I won't say any more than that other than that, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Any other members wish to comment on this application? Councillor Swear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could I just ask, on the condition in section 11.2.10 about biodiversity enhancements, while I welcome that, does that actually then sort of start to progress it up the fact of the biodiversity gain at all? And if there is a gain, does it take above the 10%? Because by the time this planning application breaks ground, it's going to fall in the legal January of next year.
Thank you, Councillor. For this application, when the application was granted, we didn't have biodiversity net gain. We do encourage any developers where an outline application has been granted to start looking at that. I think from the ecologist's point of view is that he was happy that it didn't need to include biodiversity net gain, but what was attached to the original permission by way of condition was a biodiversity enhancement strategy. And that has actually been signed off by the council's ecologist. An additional condition was put on prior to the occupation in the biodiversity enhancement layout for the bespoke biodiversity enhancements are submitted to and approved in writing to us, which includes all the bespoke biodiversity, which will, whilst we haven't got the matrix and the calculations for the biodiversity net gain of 10%, there will be a net gain of some sort, and I can tell you. But going forward, when the reserve matters come forward for the housing parcels, we will expect them to be providing us with that information.
Through the Chair, could I just come back to you on that? Because I think what's really important on this is also the connectivity of green spaces going through estates like this, is that actually we connect green spaces also, so that we're continuous all the way through to allow a wildlife corridor, because that's becoming more and more important also for the travel of obviously small animals and insects and everything else. So I just wondered if in future that could be taken into consideration by the Planning Committee on all applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shriver. I think, yes, might be slightly straying off the specific application, but yes, your point is noted. Any other members wish to make a comment on this? Would any, I assume not. Would anybody like to make a comment?
I just want to move on.
Yes, I'd like to move officers. Would anybody like to move anything? Councillor Shriver. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see no reason not to move officer recommendation on this application. Thank you.
So find a seconder. Councillor Ritchie. Oh, sorry. Councillor Monday. That's what you've done, isn't it? Thank you. So let me find the actual recommendation. Sorry. So yes, so Councillor Holland has moved that we grant this application, seconded by Councillor Monday. All those in favour of granting this application? Those against? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay, members, that application has been granted. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next item this evening, which is item number 5C, application number 23/00738 out, land rear of 231 Witham Road, Black Notley. Members, the first page on this on your agenda is page 55. If you'd like to pull that up on your screens. We don't have any speakers on this application, so we will move straight to the presentation, which will be given by Melanie.
Good evening, members. The application before you this evening is an outline application with all matters reserved apart from access for 13 residential units. As set out within the committee report at paragraph 1.3, members will be aware that an appeal for non-determination has been lodged by the applicant, and therefore the local authority can no longer determine this application, but we are required to set out what the decision would have been if a decision had been made. That's where we're at, and I'll repeat that again at the end of the presentation. So the application we're looking at this evening is at land rear of 231 Witham Road, Black Notley. This slide here shows you the application site. We can see that Witham Road runs top to bottom, north to south, along here, and the access will come in between property numbers 229 and 231. With part of 231 being removed to make a suitably wide access to serve the properties. And then the actual application site backs onto existing properties within Witham Road and also Meadow Way to the top here. This aerial photograph puts the site in context with the wider development at the southern end of Black Notley. So we've got the access coming in here, and then the application site, which is this green parcel here, and then we've got built form and built development to the north and to the west, and then more open countryside to the east and to the south, where we've also then got the golf club as well. In terms of designation, the application site is located outside of the defined village envelope and is therefore considered to be countryside. The next two slides are indicative, but show you the site layout. This first one here shows the 13 plots. So it's an inward-facing development backing onto the properties in Meadow Way and on Witham Road. And you can see here the access road coming in between the existing property to the south, number 231, and 229 to the north. This next slide shows you indicative dwelling designs. So two-storey with that chalet design with the dormer windows. But as I say, this is an indicative drawing, and it just gives us an idea as to what could come forward at any reserved matters application should the inspectorate decide to grant the appeal. The next few slides are photographs, just to put the site in context for you. So this first photograph here shows you number 231, and this this two-storey gable here is part of the property that's going to be removed to create the widened access to serve the 13 properties. The next slide shows you can just make out the side wall of number 231, and then this detached house here is number 229, and this is the existing access way that serves the garaging here that you can see in the photograph, but also to the back of number 231. This photograph hopefully puts in context the existing width that's there at the moment, and then if you imagine this portion of the property being demolished, the width of the access road to then serve the properties at the back. The next photograph shows you a long-range view of the site from Bulford Lane to the east. So this is the application site here, and then you can make out the existing part of Black Notley along the horizon there. The next photographs are taken within the site, and I'll show you various vantage points. So this is taken within the site, looking back up towards where the access will be. So this is number, sorry, excuse me. This property here is number 229. So this will remain intact, and the access road will run in here, with this portion of 231 being removed to make that wider access point. This is a photograph looking across the site, looking eastwards, and the existing vegetation that you can see here all sits outside the application site. This photograph is again looking across the site to the northeast, and you can just make out the backs of some of the properties in Meadow Way. Again, a little bit further along, looking north towards Meadow Way. And then a further shot showing existing properties in Meadow Way, and then some of the properties that back on from Witham Road. A view across the site looking to the south. And then, as I set out earlier in the presentation, we're not able to make a decision on this application because of the submission of a non-determination appeal, but we are required to submit to the Planning Inspectorate what decision members would have come to if they'd had the opportunity. So, to give you a summary, it's an outline application with all matters reserved except for access, and it's for up to 13 homes. There are a couple of benefits as set out within the officer report. So there would be the delivery of up to 13 homes, and then economic benefits during construction and thereafter. One other benefit that's not listed on there would be the commuted sum for affordable housing. That is referred to within the committee report. However, there are a number of adverse impacts. So we have the conflict with policy LPP1 because of the development being outside the settlement boundary. The proposals represent an encroachment into the countryside and an unacceptable form of urbanisation. there's an unacceptable level of vehicle movements resulting in a harmful impact on living conditions on nearby residents. The indicative proposals have not demonstrated that they can satisfactorily accommodate the 13 dwellings proposed, and there is insufficient drainage information. And therefore, based on doing the planning balance, the recommendation would have been to refuse this planning application. And that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Melanie? Members? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I ask the officers, with respect to property 231, which would be changed in its plan form, has there been any assessment of whether the house in its modified form would be consentable under current policy?
No, I don't think I've looked at that element of it. The interesting thing is that the house has been extended, and it's the original part of the original part of the house that would be demolished, and so the remaining portion is mostly extension and a bit of original. But yeah, we haven't made an assessment on the overall resulting design. Oh, Suzanne, what?
Yeah, just to clarify on that point, the owner of that said property could actually demolish part of their dwelling today without planning permission. So it's that element of the proposed is not part that actually needs planning permission, which is why it's not been assessed as part of this current application.
Sir Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am one of 3 ward councillors that represents Great Notley and Black Notley, so I'm quite interested in this application. What I think sticks out for me the most is the fact that this is outside of the settlement boundary within Black Notley. So if you're looking to extend that, then you're looking to extend past that boundary and into what's constituted as countryside. So I think that straight away is a valid reason to refuse, or to side with officer recommendations to refuse this application. But I think just taking it slightly down to a more personal level, I think we do, as a planning authority, have a duty to care for the residents either side of that access. And I think the amount of traffic that would be moving in and out of that location, bearing in mind it's in a remote countryside location, you're going to need a reliance on vehicles. And I think the amount of vehicle movements daily between that access point for that number of units proposed, I think is highly unacceptable to impose that on the 2 residents either side of that access. So taking it down a level, I think even that is an unfair proposal to be put forward for us this evening. I'll leave it there for now, see if anyone else has got any comments, but at the moment I side with the officer's recommendation to refuse. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Any other members wish to make a comment? Councillor Schwer.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, while officers are on this, could I just ask how they arrive at an acceptable level of vehicle movements in the harmful impact on this application, please?
In terms of the number generated, so given the number of new homes proposed, so up to 13, we would then look at the number of traffic movements related to each new property, and that each property is likely to possibly have 2 vehicles each, two private vehicles each. So it would be a calculation of those number of new properties, the number of new vehicles associated with that, comings and goings, going out in the morning, coming back at the end of the day, and it was just that resulting number that we just considered to be excessive in relation to what's currently experienced by those 2 occupiers, and it was at a level where we felt that we were uncomfortable with that level in terms of that impact that it would have on in terms of noise, disturbance, comings and going at any time of the morning, any time of the day, and that would have been the basis for our conclusion.
Any other members wish to comment at all? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm surprised that once again we're looking at a proposal which seems to be ill thought through, in the sense that there's no drainage plan, and that is surely an enormously topical issue at the moment. So its absence is really, really strange in my view, and gets in the way of making decisions at all. The other thing is that I can't feel that the landscaping is secure if it's all, admittedly on an outline drawing, proposed to be in people's gardens, because then they've got the freedom to take the things away and therefore negate any beneficial gains from their being there. Altogether, I feel that this outline proposal looks overly dense, and some of the houses' amenity space would be quite compromised. So I'm afraid I personally cannot support this proposal.
Yes, I would like to just pick up myself. Actually, one of the other points that has been borne out in your report, which was the car-dominated street scene. I mean, I think we're used to seeing in our planning applications quite often sort of tandem parking, and the reason for that is to have some green space at the front of the houses, not just have hard surfacing and cars lining up in front of houses. So, I mean, I think it's all indicative. It's just, again, trying to squeeze too much on too small a space, in my opinion. Any other members wish to make any further comment? In that case, would anybody like to move officer's recommendation that if we did have power to determine this application, we would refuse it? Oh, Councillor Ritchie, are you going to?
Please, Madam Chairman, if we had been making a decision tonight, then I would support refusal for this application.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Diamond. Thank you. So it has been moved by Councillor Ritchie, seconded by Councillor Diamond, that if we did have power to determine this application, we would have refused it. All those in favour of refusal? Thank you. Abstentions? Any against? No. Right, one abstention. Thank you, members. That application has been, would have been refused. So we now move on to our next application, which is a tree preservation order, relates to a tree preservation order. The item number is item 6 on the agenda, and the tree preservation order number is 04/2023, and it relates to 1 Foundry Lane, Earls Colne. We do not have any speakers on this application, so we will go straight to the presentation, which is going to be given by Neil. And this application, members, is on page 87 of your agenda.
Good evening, members. So this application is in respect of a tree preservation order which the council is looking to confirm for 1 pine tree, which is located in the property 1 Foundry Lane, which is in Earls Colne. So this is the sort of for those familiar with Earls Colne, which provides the context of the site. So relatively close to the High Street and Massingham Drive. This is the location of the tree in the garden of number 1 here. And then just as a sort of wider context, so the yellow line just denotes the conservation area boundary. The green dots refer to other TPOs within the central village. So we're looking at the site just here. And then we've got some photos just to show the context. So this is showing the tree highlighted with the nice orange arrow to make it nice and clear. So we can see this is a view from the High Street looking south. So the property number 1 Foundry Lane is just on the left-hand side of the photo here. And then this is looking, again, looking towards the tree, but this time from the junction of Massingham Drive and Foundry Lane, so looking east. So again, prominent in the surroundings, even with the vegetation in front of it. And then another view, this time from just from Massingham Drive, again showing the tree and its prominence. And then this is looking down Foundry Lane, so you can see the tree in relation where it sits within the garden more clearly here. So quite a deep garden, but much of the canopy overhanging the garden, some overhanging the lane. And as you'll have seen from the comments from the resident who's objecting to the order being made, one of the complaints was about not only the debris falling within their garden, so the pine needles and the cones which fall throughout the year, but also bird faeces. And the resident was drawing attention to the fact that local residents will have complained to him previously about bird faeces dropping on the drive, which is outside his property. Previously, he says he has cleared this himself, but his frustration with the situation, he's not going to do that any longer. As we've explained within the report, the responsibility for clearing up debris from the tree, so whether that's needles or cones or bird faeces, or issues arising from that, those would not be a reason not to confirm a TPO when we're assessing an application. So as we've set out in the report, the tree is considered to have a high amenity value. It's a black pine, which has an important sort of characteristic, contributes towards local character and the conservation area. The tree has been assessed against tempo and scored highly enough to have the tree preservation order made. So in interest of preserving the amenity, officers asked members to approve the order so that we can make the order. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I'll pass that over to members. Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I read the report very carefully. The tree scored highly on the tempo assessment. I was very keen to see how close it was to the house, and actually it's quite well set away from the house. And as officers have said in the report, trees do drop things. There's no way around that. And if we take the view that we're going to get rid of trees on the basis they drop things, there's not going to be many left. I think it is a very fine tree. It's clearly visible from the public realm. There's no question about that. And I think for all the procedural reasons we have in front of us, we have to confirm the TPO, and I'm very happy to move that. Sorry, I'm not allowed to do that, am I? I have to wait. Oh, question for officers. Actually, yes, I keep doing that. Question for officers. On a completely separate site, completely separate tree, I was told that TPOs don't come to committee anymore. Could officers explain why this one has?
So my understanding is it's come because of objections to the order being made. But I've got to be honest, I haven't got a copy of the scheme of delegation to hand, Councillor Abbott, so I will confirm that after the meeting. But my understanding was it was the fact we're trying to make the order and there was an outstanding objection. That's the reason that it's come.
That's a good question, Councillor. I don't know the answer to that myself either. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not just to my mind whether a tree is at all visible in the public realm. It's how does it contribute to the settlement, to the well-being of people who live there, and a whole bundle of other reasons. And one thing that is beyond doubt in my mind is this, together with the group of vegetation that sits beneath it, as can be seen in the officer's slide. The tree itself adds a great deal of stature and weight to that setting and has the effect of softening a fundamentally urban setting. So in which case, it's, to my mind, is irrespective of the technical methods by which we assess these things, simply going there, which I've done, and looking at it, makes you realise it's important to the street scene, and this is an attractive area and an attractive settlement, and this makes a quite notable and significant contribution. And on that basis, I believe it should be protected.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Holland has covered one point that I was going to make, in as much as that slide number 5, does show it in a really good context with regard to the values that sits in front of it. It actually kind of builds up to what's actually gives it a really good landscape. I think the other thing to note is that sometimes pines of this age, especially if they're lone trees, can sometimes grow with a slight tilt, whereas this tree actually looks like it's pretty upright. So any outstanding risk from anything around kind of boughs falling, or any kind of additional risk that might impact any landowners or in the vicinity of landowners, I think has gone away. So therefore I think we've got even more reason to make sure that this tree is protected. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Any other member wish to make a comment on this application, or rather tree preservation order? No. So would anybody like to move officer's recommendation that we confirm TPO?
Move officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Robert. Seconder, anybody? Councillor Holland, thank you. So it has been moved by Councillor Abbott and seconded by Councillor Holland that we confirm the provisional tree protection order, preservation order in respect of this tree. All those in favour of that? That is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So we'll now move on to our final application this evening, which is another tree preservation order. It's item 7 on your agenda. The tree preservation order is number 06/2023, and it's located at 3 The Mile, London Road, Braintree. And we do have 2 speakers on this application. First of all, members, I should tell you starts on page 101 of your agenda. So we have, as I say, 2 speakers, and the first speaker this evening is Mr. Fugman. If you'd like to come to the table, we have 3 minutes again. Press the microphone and whenever you're ready to start.
Good evening. Thank you for finding time for me to speak today. The argument for this tree protection order is that the trees provide an amenity for the public and that they should be retained for the benefit of the general public. The Mall is a private road that I own, and my private property is right at the end of the private road. You then have my garden to the rear of the property, and the trees are at the rear of my private garden. There is then hectares and hectares of private land to the rear of this. There are no public footpaths in this area. It is clear that the trees could not be in a more private setting and that the general public cannot see these. Any trees proposed for the removal are screened by more moderate value oaks on the boundary, and then removal would not be noticed by my neighbours. Not one of my neighbours has spoken in favour of retaining the TPO or objected to the trees being removed. The only neighbour who has voiced an opinion on this has also objected to the TPO. No one, apart from the council tree officer, has spoken in favour of the TPO. It is also worth noting that the trees to the north and the south of my garden will not fall under the TPO, presumably because they do not and never will provide an amenity to the public. Looking at Appendix 3 of the committee report, these photos quite clearly show that none of the trees sat within my garden protrude above the houses on London Road. There is one tree protruding above the houses on London Road. This tree is the only high-value tree within the blanket TPO and sits next door within the garden of 173 London Road. Apart from that tree, there is only a tight angle where you can see trees just from afar. To see them, you need to stop at the end of the Mall, which is a private road, and look towards the very end of it. Through my gate, into my private garden, through my gate into my private property and to the rear of my private garden. A very small, specific angle. How many people will walk past, stop and do that? And how often? Not many, if any. Cars driving would clearly be moving too fast to catch a glimpse of the end of the mall.
Yes, Stephen, I'm going to stop you there because you've had your 3 minutes, but obviously we've got your statement and we've all had it in advance, and we would have read we can read it obviously in front of us now. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. So the next speaker is Mr. Firth from Fraser Halls Associates. Again, 3 minutes for both. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good evening. My name is James Firth from Fraser Halls Associates, speaking on behalf of Jabil London Road Limited. An outline planning application for up to 9 dwellings was made on this site earlier in the year, following extensive pre-application work and engagement with planning officers. Despite this, a temporary TPO was then issued, and since then we have struggled to get further engagement on a suitable way forward. We have submitted written representations on the TPO, which I note are covered in the officer report. As shown in the report prepared by Underhill Tree Consultancy, the majority of trees on site have been assessed as low value, whilst some removal of lower value trees is proposed. The higher quality trees are proposed to be retained. New landscape and biodiversity enhancement areas are proposed, where further tree planting can also be encouraged and enhancement provided. Despite this, the report proposes to issue a TPO on the whole site, and although it is noted the recommendation is to vary the TPO, this has preempted the proper consideration of the merits of the approach proposed in the planning application. In particular, as noted in the report, it appears a detailed tempo assessment of the trees is not yet available. The Town and Country Planning Act sets out that TPO should be considered where it is expedient in the interest of amenity. It is necessary to show the removal of any of the trees would have a significant negative impact on the local environment and its enjoyment by the public, including public benefits. It has not been shown that each and every tree meets these criteria. In this case, the moor is a private garden and has no public access. There is a strong landscape boundary to the east of the site, and the area does not contribute to wider amenity. To make a permanent TPO at this stage would fail to allow the current planning application to follow due process and allow the merits of the individual trees to be considered as part of that process. We would therefore urge that the making of any permanent TPO, if at all, should not occur until it has been agreed how that TPO should be varied. We would be keen to work with officers to agree an approach to ensure that trees of value are protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Firth. Okay, now we'll pass over to Neil, who's going to give a presentation also on this application.
Thank you. So this application, as we've explained in the report, was originally covering an area, the rear of the mall, as you've heard described. Originally covered 52 trees. We're proposing that be modified slightly, but I'll come back to explain that. So the green hatched area, the orange line around it, indicates the site. So you can see this is London Road running down here. So this is at the sort of back of London Road, behind the houses, and as you've heard, on the mall, or the rear of the mall. This is an aerial photo showing that a bit more clearly. And then the wider context, so you can see London Road coming down here from the 120, Great Notley on this side, so Black Notley here. And then if we just move on to the next slide. So this is just to show the wider context. So you've obviously got fields at the back. The land is allocated as part of the what was known as land east of Great Notley, or Hazelwood Farm, as it's known now. So that's just to provide some extra context. And what we've done here is just show how the site potentially relates to the site that would come forward, or the allocated site which we expect to come forward. So you can see the master plan that's been drawn up by that consortium of developers shows residential development to the rear of the site where the TPO is being considered. Just for additional context in terms of where we are, because the males are sort of a little bit further up, but Luddenhall Lane just runs down here, which has got houses down it, and then public right of way, which sort of runs into the fields beyond. So we've included in a slide here part of the application which was submitted for a residential development. So that application hasn't been determined yet. It's an outline application for up to 9 dwellings. So as you heard and as you've seen in the report, when a planning application was submitted, that showed that there were some trees which were proposed to be removed to facilitate that development. That led to the site being assessed and the temporary tree preservation order being put in place. So it's important that we remember we're only considering the tree preservation order tonight. We're not considering the principle of residential development or the outline planning application. That will need to be determined at another time. The agent, Mr. Firth, referred to the fact that we shouldn't be, or he doesn't consider that we should be, confirming the order before the planning application has been determined. Officers disagree. The order does need to be confirmed. It's a temporary order at the moment, so it will expire shortly if we don't confirm it. When members, or when the council makes a determination on the planning application, if there were tree removal, which could include trees which are protected by a TPO, the planning permission would override the TPO. So by putting the TPO on, it provides an additional level of protection in the interim, or not in the interim period, but going forward, because it will be made permanent. But it doesn't prevent trees being removed in the future if the planning permission were to be granted. So if officers or members were to consider an application for residential development in the future, which necessitated tree removal, and in the balance that was considered acceptable, that could be done. So we don't see the planning application as being a reason not to consider making the TPO order permanent. So, as I said, originally when the temporary TPO was drafted, 52 trees were identified. That is, officers are recommending that that be modified. So following further assessment by the tree officer, and that's really part of the purpose of the temporary order being made, to allow us to investigate and carry out further assessment, the tree officer, or council's tree officer I should say, has recommended that it be modified so it would cover 45 trees. So just to explain, the 7 trees which were covered by the temporary order, which we're not considering should be made part of the permanent order, 3 are category U trees, so that's trees which are assessed to be of a poor quality by the tree officer and therefore not suitable for inclusion in the order. 2 are willow trees, so they're sort of the larger trees here within the garden. So they're willow trees which have a relatively short lifespan, so again aren't considered to be suitable for inclusion within the order. And then there were 2 trees, T8 and T12, which were considered to, or have been identified to have heavy leans, and as a result aren't considered to be of a condition which are worthy of inclusion within the order. So the other trees are considered to be worthy and are included. So in terms of some photographs to show the site, so the photos are predominantly from the London Road, which is where the predominant public views would be. So this is I think the view which Mr. Fugman was referring to when he was saying what can be seen from London Road. So this is the view down the drive, so you can see trees at the end of the drive, and also I think the tree in the neighbour's garden which Mr. Fugman was referring to. So then this is a further photo or image taken at a different time, but again showing the trees. And I think, you know, when we're looking at these trees, I think for members that are familiar with London Road and Black Notley, you know, we do consider that trees, whether they are, you know, frontage trees on the road or in front gardens, or whether they're larger trees in back gardens, they do sort of lend to the character, do have an amenity value, both individually and cumulatively, and that's part of the concern here. These are just some further images that we've supplied to show the trees in context. And then this is from within the site. So this is some of the oak trees which are along the boundary. So as you saw from the tree plan earlier, there's a number of trees around the boundary, but also within the site. So this is just to show some of the trees from within the site. So we do consider that the trees identified are worthy of retention based on assessment, both by the tree report which was submitted by the applicant, but also the council's own assessment. We do think that they do contribute to amenity from the London Road. We do think there's views of them and they do contribute. So we do consider them to be worthy of retention. And there are views of them either down the Mall or Breaking Ridge line. So we do consider them to qualify. So we are asking members who approve the modified order, so that's the 45 trees rather than 52 originally identified, and we want to make that in good time before the temporary order expires on the 22nd, which is sort of obviously coming fairly soon. So we're happy to recommend or ask that members agree the modified order in the interest of amenity as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Members? Remember, we should do comment on this application. Councillor Abbott?
Just waiting to see if the local member wanted to do first. Well, I think the officer set out very clearly that if planning consent was granted, that trumps the TPO, unfortunately, in many cases. And so this, what we're doing tonight, if we approve this, is not necessarily hindering that process, which is a separate process. In themselves, the trees, obviously, got to be careful of the words here, but it is noted, it's in the paperwork about the outline proposal and how that could juxtapose very closely with many of the trees. And so there has also been accommodation that some of the trees, the officers have agreed with the landowner shouldn't be in, so it's an amended order. So I don't see any showstoppers here. So when it comes to the vote, I think the officer recommendation is the correct thing.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I thought I'd give you the first chance as a tree specialist. Yeah, I completely agree with what's been said. Any planning application would take into account any tree removal that needs to be done as part of that application. I think what this safeguards here is any kind of, I'm not saying formally it would happen, but any out and out desecration of cutting down great swathes of trees before any planning consent was given with regards to the separate application. And therefore actually what it should do is just ensure there's dialogue between the applicant and the planning authority with regards to considerate means of making allowances for the planning application to come forward and any tree removal to take place in regard to whatever's being proposed. So I too will support officers' recommendations on this application. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I do think we mustn't underestimate the amenity value of groups of trees and individual trees within the street scenes. I see why it's important now that we're acquiring trees along main spine roads. So yes, right. Would anybody like to move that the officer's recommendation?
Happy to.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. That was to vary and confirm the original tree preservation order. Second of Councillor Ritchie. So all those in favour of officer's recommendation. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. The other items on the agenda, item 7, we don't have any urgent business, so I will draw that meeting to a close at 8:25. Thank you very much, members.